feel like no matter where you go in the world, you never really feel safe, you never really feel seen, and you never really feel like you can actually relax and actually rest and fully ground yourself. There's always that background noise that reminds you that in some way or another you have to be alert, and I'm sick of it, so I'm leaving Earth.
Dissociate from it. Ain't got no time, I gotta get this money. I ain't got no man. Just rubber bands, I'm married to the hundreds. I'm tryna pretend as if he really could do something for me. This is the plan. He just tryna waste my time and loving. Dissociate from it. Ain't got no time, I gotta get this money. I ain't got no man.
Well, looks like it's just us, Luna.
Tryna pretend as if he really could do something for me.
Greetings, passenger. Please activate your familiar to be seated.
Tryna waste my time and loving.
Well, Luna, it looks like our in-flight entertainment is gonna help us dive into the world of dissociation.
Don't speak it when she's saying.
Welcome back, distinguished traveler. Our system indicates you've accrued 1,066,000 miles through interdimensional withdrawal, an impressive archive of departures from the waking world. As one of terrestrial airways' most valued voyagers, you are now eligible for a complimentary elevation to our Ultra First Class Lucidity Lounge, specially curated for high-frequency dissociators and their bonded familiars. Shall I process the upgrade for you?
Oh, fuck yes, we're upgrading. I'm ordering everything on the menu, okay? Pokeballs, watermelon slushies, hibiscus lemonade, fresh ass sashimi? Whatever. And Luna can get whatever the hell she wants. This is a 3-month trip, and I refuse to dissociate and squalor. So, yes, I do accept the unlimited food, cartoons, and unfiltered creativity.
I ain't got no man. Just rubber bands, I'm married to the hundreds. Dissociate from friends.
Welcome, passenger. You are en route to Catatonia. This transmission is mandatory. Access is not granted without instruction. Catatonia is not linear terrain. It responds to memory, perception, and unresolved emotion. Entering without preparation leads to psychic fragmentation. And terrestrial border control doesn't permit that. This podcast is a neural orientation, recorded by your future self. It contains the frameworks you'll need to move through Catatonia without getting lost in it. You're not here to consume this. You're here to metabolize it. Stay still while I scan for abnormalities and healthy cognitive function. Scan complete. Now we both know that we created Catatonia as a way to escape the world when it doesn't bend to our neurodivergent needs, when the chaos around us is too loud and we want to escape the sounds, smells, and poor lighting and people of everyday life. And this type of dissociation is usually pathologized as a failure of integration, but for those with chronic trauma, it is a sophisticated adaptation, a neurological compromise the psyche creates when the external environment proves itself as too hostile for occupation. In our case, dissociation is not a passive symptom, but an active mechanism that keeps us safe and creative. It is how I built stability where none existed. Some would say as a defense against reality, but I would say as an internal restructuring that allowed me to maintain peace and cohesion in the presence of overwhelming experiences. I have studied myself long enough to understand that my form of dissociation is not a rupture or a moral failing. It's a system that colonized therapy tries to frame as a me problem and not a societal failure. My dissociation is a repeatable, patterned, multi-layered system of removal and reconstruction, not something that needs to be fixed, but honored. I leave not to vanish, but to access an interior space that is more coherent than the external one. And I do this through imagination, through narrative, through the deliberate construction of parallel realities that stabilize what the real world continually fractures. That is my meditation. Nearly a total removal and remodel of the world I see myself in. And this process was not accidental. It developed in response to relational violations, environments that gaslit my perception, and the prolonged absence of spiritual, emotional, and physical safety. I did not dissociate randomly. It was never a weakness. My system is intelligent, sensitive to power, perception, tone, and contradiction. It pulls me inward when the room becomes too performative. It activates when I'm being studied but not seen. It knows when speech is permitted but truth is not. And if you want to speak in clinical terms, this could fall under what's called maladaptive daydreaming, though I find that term to be pretty insufficient. It reduces a complex, effectively charged, and often somatically activated process to a disorder of attention. But what looks like distraction is often a form of immersion. I do not simply drift into fantasy. I do sometimes when I'm bored, but when it's deeply personal, I enter a space designed by my own nervous system to process what cannot be metabolized in real time. It's a recalibration that requires a rare kind of intelligence, emotional, spatial, symbolic, and narrative. I do not simply retreat into a shell. I observe and I create worlds within worlds that mirror, invert, and decode the experiences I can't fully confront in the moment. I've built civilizations in my mind that follow moral laws far more consistent than the ones I encountered in reality. So, art, for me, functions as an extension of this internal infrastructure. It is not a product, content, or a facade of my wisdom. It is evidence of pattern recognition, of emotional processing, of symbolic encoding, skill, and precision. When I create, I am not decorating my pain to be a palatable piece of work. I am organizing it to be a language that I understand. I am shaping it into structures that can be examined, re-entered, and navigated. My creative output is not separate from my psychological architecture. It is the architecture. Every frame, every line, every transition reflects a shift in how my psyche has decided to manage the dissonance between internal knowing and external invalidation. This internal knowing has always existed beneath the surface. I have long understood myself as both the subject and the analyst, someone who is living through experience while simultaneously interpreting it. I recognize my child self, my adult self, and the observer of both. I move between these selves deliberately, not compulsively. When I inhabit the role of the victim, it is not to collapse into fragility, but to restore proximity to a part of me that requires a witness. When I inhabit the survivor, it is not to perform resilience, but to assert that I have built systems strong enough to hold what I once had to hide. This dual positioning, victim and survivor, artist and analyst, is essential. To over-identify with one negates the other. If I remain only the victim, I lose access to my capacity for authorship. If I remain only the survivor, I abandon the parts of me that still need to be protected, not by others, but by myself. Most of the women I've known who dissociate at this level are not fragile. They are highly structured. Their inner lives are organized with so much precision. Their fantasies are not chaos or crash outs. They are simulations, test sites, allegorical spaces where they rerun, revise, and re-experience what their real lives did not allow them to complete. There is a significant distinction between dissociation without insight and dissociation with full cognitive access. The former disconnects one from reality in a way that fragments meaning. The latter reconfigures meaning within an internal schema that is consistent, stable, and often more emotionally accurate than the external narrative one is given. Much of my work, internally and externally, has involved mapping these spaces, not escaping into them blindly, but understanding their architecture. I do not believe in the binary of real versus unreal. Emotional reality carries weight. Internal imagery, when consistent across time and space, carries data. My animations, stories, and visual worlds are repositories of that data. They reflect not only how I felt, but what I knew before I had the language to name it. There is also a critical difference between trauma-informed creativity and trauma-dependent identity. I've spent years identifying whether I was expressing myself or reproducing the conditions of my harm. Many artists confuse exposure with transformation, but unprocessed pain tends to repeat itself, even in art, especially in art. It is entirely possible to be praised for one's aesthetic while remaining trapped in the same loop of unintegrated emotional material. My commitment has never been to self-expression for its own sake. My work is about discernment. My creative process is diagnostic, and I pay attention to the parts of me that surface during creation. I look for signals, fixations, stylistic compulsions, recurring imagery, and I track them over time. The goal is not to be seen, the goal is to know, to build a self that is internally legible, regardless of how others interpret it. I've also had to develop criteria for distinguishing between what I call extractive imagination and restorative imagination. Extractive imagination uses creative energy to reconstruct harm, often unconsciously, in order to manage unresolved attachment to the abuser or system. Restorative imagination builds new patterns that validate the internal world without needing to reenact the original injury. In my case, the difference is measurable. When I'm operating in restorative imagination, my body feels calmer, more oriented. My nervous system doesn't enter the familiar state of arousal it associates with performance or surveillance. I am not proving anything. I am simply documenting. This is the state in which my best work is produced, not because it is cleaner or more coherent, but because it emerges from a system that is no longer at war with itself. A final note on memory. Dissociation affects not only presence but time. It alters one's relationship to sequence, duration, and causality. This is why traditional narrative formats often fail me. My stories do not unfold chronologically. They emerge in fragments, orbits, loops. And now, a final note on memory. Dissociation affects not only presence but time. It alters one's relationship to sequence, duration, and causality. This is why traditional narrative formats often fail me. My stories do not unfold chronologically. They emerge in fragments, orbits, loops. I create through a spatial temporal logic that reflects how trauma actually feels, nonlinear, recursive, spatially encoded. My animations, visual poems, and episodic structures mirror the internal tempo of my psyche. They are not escapes, they are replicas of the way I've had to organize experience to survive. This is what distinguishes my work, not the aesthetic, not the production quality, but the fact that it originates from an internal system that has studied itself with precision and unflinching clarity. I know what I'm doing, and I know why I'm doing it. I don't need external validation because I have cultivated internal legibility. I am not waiting to be understood. I am simply documenting what has already been understood within me. That's the work, not just creating, but building a mind structure enough to hold its own realities, and then choosing carefully and consciously which ones to share.
So basically, that was a long-winded way of saying that we dissociate because the world never really made any sense. So we made art out of the architecture of our trauma to create a new reality that isn't dysfunctional.
Ladies and passengers, this is your captain speaking. We've begun our final descent into Catatonia. At this point, we ask that you begin adjusting your awareness to account for the shift. Thought patterns may slow, memories may rearrange. As a reminder, this region operates on symbolic logic. Sensory input may carry emotional charge. Language may move in loops. Time will feel less linear the closer we get. Do not fight it. Coherence will return in a different form. Please avoid reaching for old frameworks to interpret what you see upon landing. They will not hold here. This space was not designed to match external life. It was designed to hold what external life could not. You may notice suppressed memories rising, or narratives you thought you'd buried coming forward in fragments. This is not regression, it's recovery. These patterns are surfacing because you finally landed somewhere that can hold them without collapse. Cabin pressure may fluctuate as the nervous system makes space for what's been postponed. This is normal. If you feel heavy, it's because you're arriving in full. Landing will be smooth, but dense. You'll feel it more in your chest than in your body. Expect a moment of stillness before the mind reorients. Thank you for flying terrestrial airways. So, Catatonia was originally inspired by the artist going into a catatonic state after she was traumatized and abused with no real safe place to go. So, she created this world based on that state of mind, and unironically, that type of isolation made her distrust humans and befriend cats, making Catatonia and its characters become perfectly aligned. And it also plays into the whole ideal of being a quote-unquote cat lady, as a woman who refuses to settle for just any old man or any old thing. The episode starts off with Gazelle being gossiped by a familiar who didn't even have the courage to come to Earth, which was a cue to the gossipers that Gazelle experienced in her waking life on Earth. After she was open about her trauma, they gossiped. They had the audacity to wrongfully judge, but would fail if they ever went through what she did. I mean, honestly, it really is a remarkable breakdown of her experience, and I've been a fan of her ever since she created me, but sometimes I can't help but think how maybe one day she will abandon us. I don't know. But not you, right? You're like a friend, right? You'll like the video and you'll stick around and come back, right? I mean, next episode gets real juicy, so we'll see you next week.